have specific rulings of Sharia. So let us move to the primary objectives of Sharia. What is the primary objective of Sharia? There are two views from the scholar. The first one says that the general objective of Sharia, or the primary objective of Sharia, can be best captured in the verse of the Quran, which is وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. So they said that the Sharia is a mercy to the whole universe, because even the Prophet ﷺ is sent as a mercy to the entire universe. So it is Rahmah lil Alameen. So the Sharia, so it's Rahmah, is a mercy for each and everyone on this earth. So which means it's not something peculiar to Muslims alone. It is for Muslims and non-Muslims as well. So as you can see in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, as reported by Imam Tirmidhi. So, but let us go to the second view. The second view says that the objective of Sharia can be best captured based on the inductive approach of the scholar, whereby they look into the Quran. Okay, so whereby they look into the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to come out with the primary objective of Sharia, which is well-being of human beings, and also to prevent evils and harms. So this is the second view. But in order to summarize this view, Ibn Qayyim, he said that the Sharia is based on wisdom, achieving people's welfare in this life and hereafter. So he said the Sharia is all about justice, mercy, wisdom, and serving the interests of all human beings. So any ruling that replaces justice with injustice, mercy with the opposite, serving the interest to causing harm, or wisdom with nonsense, is a ruling that does not belong to Sharia, even though it is claimed that it is from the Sharia. So let us come to another level, which is the categories of Maqasid Sharia. The Sharia, Maqasid Sharia, objective of Sharia or Islamic law, has been categorized into three. One is daruriyat, essentials. The other one is hajiyat, and the third one is embellishment, tahsiniyat. So what is the meaning of daruriyat? Daruriyat, to put it simply, is something that is very essential to our life, and the absence of which can lead to total disruption and disorder in our life. So this is the essential. So which means it's something that is very, very important in our life. So under this category, the scholar, they mention 5 fundamental values that you all know. So which is the topic of our discussion today. So let me just quickly move to the one part of the Maqasid that is given to me, or two parts of Maqasid that is given to me. One of it is intellect or mind, al-aql. Al-aql is something that is very important. And even when we are talking about acquisition of wealth, al-aql is something that is very important. So there's no way for us to acquire or to create wealth without having a good intellect. So it's about that. So, and the Sharia is promoting preservation of this al-aql. So because anything that is going to be harmful to these intellects will cause total disruption and disorder to human life. So that's why the Sharia preserve it and also protect it. So there are a lot of things that can cause disorder to these intellects. So something like consumption of alcohol, intoxicating substances. So all these can cause the disruption to our intellect. So that's why they are prohibited in Sharia in order to preserve our akil. Another point that we need to highlight in order for us to know the essence of al-aql is that when Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم. This is to show that because jihad, the fighting the cause of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I'm talking about jihad, it's not just about the fighting the enemy. To fight our mind also is also one of the main jihad. In fact, it is narrated by Sufyan al-Thawri. He said that this is something that I've been fighting to conquer, and I am unable to conquer it from time to time. So they asked him, what is it? He said, my mind. So, but what I want to highlight here is that Almighty Allah put it forward even before our nafs. And as you can see in this hadith, in which the Prophet said that everyone that is being killed while protecting his wealth is a matter. So, which means preservation and protection of wealth is something that is very, very important in Sharia. And as you can see in the second hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ said that even if one is died in the course of fighting to protect his wealth, so and he was killed unjustly, falahul jannah, the paradise will be for him. So this is to know the essence of wealth. So as you can see in another verse where Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits hitting our property among ourselves in vanities, unjustly. So this is in order to prevent the something that is one of the primary objectives of Sharia, which is preservation and protection of wealth. So, and also as you can see, prohibition of misappropriation of property, theft, fraud, and all these measures that the Quran or the Sharia put in place in order to ensure the preservation of wealth. So, okay. So when we are talking about preservation of wealth, there are about 4 or 5 aspects that the scholars of today, they discuss. One of it is the acquisition and ownership of wealth. So which means the Sharia allow private ownership. So, and the Sharia also promotes acquisition of wealth. One of the examples that is very important to note here is that even though zakat is considered as one of the pillar of Sharia, but the Prophet ﷺ was given an instruction that we should invest the wealth of orphans under our control so that it will not be consumed by zakat. So which means the Sharia encourage acquisition and protection of wealth, and protection, as you see in the previous verses and the hadith that I highlighted earlier on. So in addition to that, all the contractual agreement, I mean, the Sharia contracts that we have is to encourage acquisition and investment of wealth in Sharia. And in addition to that, there is one concept, which is a concept of a in Sharia. A means the if there is a property that is undivided by two parties. So it is allowed in Sharia if one party decided to sell his portion from the property to get the consent of the second party. So this is the concept of a shufa in Sharia. So this means that the Sharia aims to acquire and protect our property. Another means of acquisition, as we can see here, is also the means of inheritance. Okay, one of also important points that the scholar of today, they highlighted with regard to preservation of wealth is the circulation of wealth. Circulation of wealth is something that is encouraged in Sharia. As you can see in this verse, in which Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want the wealth to be under the control of few among us or wealthy people among us. So that's why the Sharia encourage circulation of wealth. That's why the Sharia forbid riba. That's why the Sharia puts in place one of the pillars of Sharia, which is zakah. So it is something that is very important. So let us highlighted another important with regard to the preservation of wealth, which is investment and growth of wealth. The Sharia prohibits keeping wealth in idle, as I highlighted earlier on with regard to the case of the wealth of orphans. So the Prophet ﷺ give instruction to invest their wealth under our control. And also, there is one concept of iqtar, concession in Sharia, whereby the ruler is allowed to give the land that remains idle to certain people who have the skill to develop the land for the benefit of the public. So this is to encourage the investment and growth of wealth in Sharia. Another example is the prohibition of holding the property in Sharia. The Sharia doesn't allow holding property, so that once the price becomes skyrocketing, so the person will now be selling it at the higher price. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in one hadith, "La yahtakiru illa khati'un." The Prophet ﷺ said that no one will be holding the property except a sinner. So which means the one that is holding property is considered as a sinner in Sharia, and the person has committed a crime that is punishable in Sharia. So the Sharia encourage creation of job opportunities. And in fact, it is also narrated in one hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that anyone that we hire to be our officer, so if he doesn't have house, should get house. If he doesn't have car or anything to ride, if he doesn't have a ride, he should get it. If he's not married, he should get married. So all this in order to show that the Sharia encourage to create job opportunities. And the Sharia also encourage things that will make our life easy. So as you see under the categories of Maqasid Shari'ah, which is tahsiniyat, anything that will make our life easier, Sharia encourages. So as you just hear from this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So, and the Sharia also encourage to share risk, as you can see in the case of partnership contract that we have, musharaka, mudaraba, and others. We have not, the partnership contract is not limited to this musharaka or mudaraba. We have other types of partnership. So some are related to the agricultural product like mugarasa. So here Sharia encourages risk bearing and profit sharing. So, and anything, any stipulation in the contract that will go against risk bearing and profit sharing will make that partnership contract invalid. So another point that we need to highlight here is related to prohibition of excessiveness, extravagant life. The Sharia goes against it. And that's why the Quran says, Innal mubadhirina kanu min ikhwani shayatin, wa kana shaytanu li rabbihi kafura. The Quran says that Innal mubadhirin min ikhwani shayatin. Those who overspend, they are the fellow of shaitan. And shaitan is someone that has go against the rule of Allah, meaning that he disbelieved in Allah. He disbelieved in Allah, which means he did not follow the instruction of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So which means whenever people are living this kind of life, that will lead them to that result. So that's why you can see the proximity between living this kind of luxury life when other people are there to take care of. So the Sharia does not discourage to enjoy our life, as Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf, whereby he says, قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ لِعِبَادِهِ وَالطَّيِّبَاتِ مِنَ الرِّزْقِ قُلْ هِيَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا خَالِصَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Almighty Allah says that, O Messenger of Allah, tell them, مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ لِعِبَادِهِ. Who's going to prohibit the wealth of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has provided for his servants, for his good servants? وَالطَّيِّبَاتِ مِنَ الرِّزْقِ. And the best of provisions in this life, قُلْ هِيَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Tell them, these are for the people of belief, for those who believe in Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one thing that the scholar highlighted, scholar of tafsir highlighted here is that when Allah said that قُلْ هِيَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, He did not restrict it to all the believers alone. So which means non-believers, non-Muslims can also share from this bounty of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Almighty Allah moved ahead in order to know that He used the word of Rahman, as we all know. That, so which means the mercy of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is for everyone. But this word of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be solely for the people of belief, those who believe in Almighty Allah in the day of judgment. So just like what we know in Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. So Rahim is restricted to those who believe in Allah, but Rahman is for everyone. So this is the objective of Sharia with regard to the wealth. So one point that I just want to highlight here is that the scholar, they say that in order to preserve this very objective of Sharia, that's why Almighty Allah prohibits riba, which is usury or interest. Of course, usury, even though there are some concepts saying that, yeah, maybe what is disallowed is usury, but the interest one, especially productive interest. So, or complementary or compensatory interest. So it's not something that is disallowed. Interest in Sharia is disallowed. And it is disallowed for many reasons. Because the scholar, when they discuss the illah, the reason behind prohibition of interest, they say that there are ma'qulatul ma'na. So the scholar said that there are two perspectives here. There are ma'qulatul ma'na. There are reasons that we can rationalize based on our intellect, but our intellect cannot determine, cannot comprehend the rationale behind prohibition of interest, riba. But those scholars, they mention that, yes, there are some meanings that we highlighted, but that doesn't mean that this is the entire reason for the prohibition of riba. So that's why they say that it comprises these two aspects. What can be rationalized and what cannot be rationalized. So which means it is ma'qulat al-ma'na wa ghayru ma'qulat al-ma'na. So, but among the reason that they mention is the injustice that is there. Imam al-Ghazali, he said in his book, Ihya Ulumuddin, he said that the giving qard, lending money to someone, is an act of charity that only Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward. And if the lender now wanted to get reward at all costs from the borrower, it goes against the very objective of this qard. So that's why the element of going against the rule of Allah is there. So, and the injustice that is there, according to some writings of the contemporary authors, they say that the injustice that is there is that when even for productive loan or interest, the person wanted to use the money that he borrowed from you or you lend him to do certain investments. Whether the investment is successful or not, the lender is not here because he's going to get fixed interest. So which is unjust. Because if you want to get reward, if you want to get a return, you should also subject yourself to the risk. Like in the case of musharaka or in the case of mudaraba. So in order to round it up, there are three elements in Sharia to earn returns, to earn reward. One is by capital, but the scholars say that the capital cannot stand alone, cannot stand alone. So which means the capital must be with the remaining two aspects, two elements. The second element is taking risk. So which means if you put your capital, you don't subject yourself to risk, you are not entitled to the return. The third one is the labor, or if you want, you can call it service, or if you want, you can call it work. So all these are the one that you can use under the labor as well. So which means one can earn the reward from his labor. For example, in the case of Mudaraba, the Mudarib managing party, what subjects him to the sharing of profit in Mudaraba, it is because of his labor. And what subjects the capital provider to the profit, okay, what subjects capital provider to profit sharing is because of the capital and subjectivity of himself to the risk. So thank you very much for your time, for listening, and I'm fully sorry for some of the technical error that happened in the beginning of this session. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wow, thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan. And I reward you, Dr. Kail, for insightful knowledge and pointers that you have shared with us this morning. I know that for given 2 hours, still be here, talking about this enlightening topic. Thank you so very much. May Allah reward you. May Allah make it count. It matters. Thank you. So just to, if we have questions, please, because of time, you can type it in the chat box at the end of the whole session, be able to questions one after the other. So quickly, I would like to go into the second topic because our speaker has been waiting aside. And it's very interesting that we're just going to do it so into protection of life and protection of lineage. Dr. MIKAIL has been able to us of protection of wealth and protection of intellect and the importance of intellect, all that we in making us even ponder upon the greatness of Allah, makes us ponder upon all of the that Allah's words are supposed to help us. We don't have the right intellect, can't even function properly as humans. The intellect be able to serve and manage our wealth as we should. Intellect to know chance of us having to manage and protect our wealth. And also highlighted us the importance of protection of wealth, how it creates more wealth for us, how it will preserve our wealth, how we'll be able to impact on the society and humanity at large, and all of some other objectives that he mentioned. Without taking too much of your time again, I'd like to introduce to Professor KAMIL OMOTESO, who is speaking to protection of life and the protection of age as two other objectives of Sharia. So, Professor, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me just do a brief intro on Professor OMOTESO, who's Vice-Chancellor and the Dean of College of Business, Law and Social Sciences at the University of Derby. He holds a professional chair in accounting and governance, and he has published extensive areas of accounting, auditing, accountability, governance, and ethics. Today we talk about ESG a lot, being environmentally friendly, sustainable investment, corporate governance, and so on. So he is in all of this area. He also chairs the Board of Trustees of Human Appeal, one of the largest international Muslim charities. I welcome Professor KAMIL OMOTESO.
Thank you very Thank you very much, Sister Adenike, for that introduction. And I really want to seize the opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting me and for putting this webinar together. My brother that has spoken before me has really done a lot, so I hope I will be able to skip some of my slides so that I can concentrate on the areas that are particularly relevant to my part of the Maqasid. Are we able to hear me well?
Yes, Prof. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Excuse me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أيها الإخوة الأحبة السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this beautiful opportunity to be able to gather, albeit virtually, but to remind ourselves of our responsibilities and duties to Allah and to fellow creatures. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the time we spend together on the scale of our good deeds. I will be concentrating on two aspects of the Maqasid as highlighted by my brother Dr. Saeed MIKAIL earlier on. And I will be situating this within the Islamic wills and endowment models, inshallah ta'ala. Just as a little recap, the Maqasid al-Sharia have been hugely written upon, particularly in the last century or so. And I thank the organizer for choosing the right person to provide the foundation, because as far as I am aware, Malaysia is at the forefront of issues relating to Maqasid and its contextualization within the contemporary world. And they are foremost as well in Islamic finance related issues. So I really enjoyed his presentation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him and preserve him for the ummah. The organization he particularly works for is known worldwide in this direction. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all their efforts. So just as a quick recap, I've decided to number the 5 Maqasid, the 5 main objectives of Sharia. That is, what is the goal? What Sharia is not just there. What is the end result? What do we want to achieve with it? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to bring about? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want to bring about through Sharia, by instituting Sharia? So, and scholars have agreed that there are 5 main areas, and for any, because this is not from hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so people can debate it, but despite all the debates across the centuries, I think mainstream scholars have agreed that these are the 5 key areas. Any other area you think about can actually find its way in any of the 5. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The little criticism which I kind of agree with is that we shouldn't use Maqasid or Sharia as a license to start justifying what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not justified. And that has not been the intention anyway. But in an era where people will think, where people will be looking for anything to justify their whims and caprices, then it becomes problematic. So we have to watch out for these areas and call them out whenever we find people going or drifting in those areas. The foundation, as Dr. Said mentioned earlier, of even the Maqasid, etc., is underpinned by Al-Quran Al-Kareem and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once they are established, anybody who is philosophizing or trying to be an intellectual and saying, oh, this is allowed because the end result is just to be able to satisfy this, we can then call them out and just reject them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. لقوله سبحانه وتعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا. It's not befitting for a believer, male or female, after Allah and His apostle have already decreed a matter, they have concluded a matter, it's there, black and white, for them to say, I have option in my thinking, in the way I perceive it, in the modern world. And they start bringing up all these options that are really, really feeble. Allah says, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, whoever disobeys Allah and His messenger, فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا, they are indeed in a manifest error. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. So in my own contextualization, inshallah, I'll be focusing on the second Maqasid, protection of nafs, of life, and number 4, protection of nasab, protection of lineage. So I will be looking at these two in relation to Islamic wills and endowments, inshallah ta'ala. Protection of life and lineage. Just a bit more. My brother has done a lot on that, so I wouldn't repeat anything he has said, but just to drive home some key points. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes Himself as Al-Khaliq. He is the creator. And sometimes He uses the word Fatir is-samawati wal-ard, the original creator, the originator of the heavens and the earth, and what the two contain. So he says, Allahu yabda'u al-khalqa thumma yu'iduhu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started creation, thumma yu'iduhu, and He repeats it. So, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam describes, says, kullukum min Adam, all of you, your origin is Adam. You emanate from Adam. And He says, wa Adam min turab, and Adam was created from dust. So Allah is the creator, and He repeats His creation, kayfa yasha, the way He wills. So, and he has perfected the order. And that is the perfect creation. فَتَبَارَكَ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. And so glory be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the best of creators. So he creates life, and only him, Jalla wa ala, can legislate on life. So we can't. So who lives, how they live, and when they die, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determines this. It's not within our prerogative. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us permission in matters relating to life. We say life is sacrosanct. So also, somebody may say, yes, I'm the father, I'm the mother, I conceived you, I give birth to you, etc., etc. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ushered that soul in through you. So it's not just through your efforts, it's because it is in the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are going to create somebody called Kamil. He was going to be born in this year, on this date, in this hour, in this minute, in this second. He is going to live for X number of years. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when that appointed time comes, لا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون. It will not be hastened by 1 second, it will not be delayed at all. It's an appointed time. Allahu Akbar. So nurturing, caring for, defending life is our duty as Muslims. We have to nurture life, we have to care for life, we have to defend life. And life is not to be terminated unjustly. وَلَا تَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. And you are not allowed to terminate a life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made sacrosanct, إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ, unless on a just cause. And the just causes we all know. Life, somebody killed, yes, they are allowed to be killed, etc. Your life and the life of others are equally important. So you can't say, as long as I protect my life, yes, that's an amana upon you to do. You can, I will go on hunger strike until I die, or I'm feeling some pain, I want to take my own life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is haram. You are not allowed to do it. And say, after all, it's my life. I can do whatever I like with my life. No, you can't, because it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that life. And you are duty bound to do what? To protect it. And it's not just your life, but the life of others. I've put that in bold so that we can understand that it's not just the life of a Muslim. It's not just the life of human being. It includes everything that lives, including animals, including plants, including everything. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described all this to companions. For the second one, protection of lineage, you will see this through the lens of Islamic concept or perception in relation to conception. Islam wants a male and a female to marry legally by the principles of Islam, and then they can reprocreate by the permission of Allah. Islam will forbid surrogacy, sperm donation, and all those modern stuff because they disrupt the lineage. And it is natural. Somebody donates sperm and the child is conceived and they said, you don't have a father, I'm just your mother. It will come at a point in time when they are disturbed. And they're doing research, even in the West, to know who exactly was my father. Where did I come from? Because it's tabi'ah, it is natural. That is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has configured us as human beings. It is permanent. It is permanent in this world. It is permanent in the hereafter. Allahu Akbar. So I cannot change who I am. I am who I am. And I should take pride in who I am. I am Kamil. That's the name I was given. Okay? Even if I change it, let's assume so. Can I change who my father is? No. My father is Zachariah and it's permanent. And I can trace who is the father of Zachariah is Zubair. Who is the father of Zubair is OMOTESO. Who is the father of OMOTESO? I can carry on. Because it's important to your identity. You know, in the Yoruba land, we have Oriki. Once you start, people will know exactly where you are from. And in some part of West African country, if you have watched or read the story of the slave trade, Kincha Kinche, they, particularly in the Gambia area, they will, their own Oriki kind of a thing, eulogy, is to trace from you to the next, to the next, to the next, including the job they do, so that everybody will know their lineage. It's important. Rasulullah never joked with it until he traced it to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And he says, Innakum tud'awna yawm al-qiyamah bi asma'ikum wa asma'i abaikum fa ahsinu asma'akum. On yawm al-qiyamah, you will be summoned by your name and the name of your fathers. So, fahsinu asma'akum. Make beautiful your names. So give beautiful names, not bad ones. So between Muslims and non-Muslims, so it doesn't really matter. I can't change, assuming, astaghfirullah, alhamdulillah, my father died as a Muslim, may Allah accept him. But assuming my father says, okay, I'm not a Muslim anymore. Does that mean it's not my father? It's my father. There's nothing I can do about it. Your father is your father, your mother is your mother, your uncle is your uncle. You may say, oh, all right, I'm not talking to them because they've done this, etc. It's entirely up to you, but you cannot change them. It's permanent. Also, Allah legislates on inheritance through lineage by birth or by marriage. And we will see this later on, inshallah ta'ala. So the two areas have been given in relation to those two aspects of Maqasid, Islamic will, as well as what we call waqf. Islamic will, call it al-wasiyya. So you say wasiyya, it doesn't matter, but I'm using this terminology. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislates regarding this. He says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 180, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ إِنْ تَرَكَ خَيْرًا الْوَصِيَّةُ لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. It is prescribed when death approaches any of you, if he leaves any goods, that he makes a bequest to parents and close relatives according to reasonable usage. Haqqan ala al-muttaqin. This is due. It is an obligation from those who are God-fearing, or on those who are God-fearing. So this is legislated. Khalas, Allah has spoken. Once you are leaving any good thing behind as kind of legacy, you have to have a will. And who are those to inherit? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is for both male and female. It does not matter your gender. As long as you fit into those categories of either you are parents or close relatives of the deceased, children, spouses, they are automatic. Those three are automatic. The rest are dependent upon the composition of the family the deceased is going to leave behind. And we will talk about that more because my time is very, very limited. Maybe when we come to question and answer, we are going to do a lot. And can I just say upfront, this area of Islamic will.
Oh, you can go on, sir. And take as much time as you require. Okay. But we're really enjoying this.
Okay, thank you. can I just say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not take this lightly, the issue of will in Islam. How do I mean? It is one of those areas of al-ma'amalat, as my brother described earlier, on social relations, activities, etc. in Islam, that are the minutest detail are spelled out by Allah. Not even just hadith. No, hadith, very, very little the Prophet ﷺ said about will. It is very mathematical and very clinical in nature. In fact, in those days before the advent of computer, only very few scholars specialized in the area of Islamic will. Because if you look at, and subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make it easy for us. If you are looking for anything relating to will, I bet you will get over 80% of this in Surah Al-Nisa and Surah Al-Baqarah combined. You have some in Surah Al-Baqarah, but in Surah Al-Nisa, you have so many. And outside these two surah, you will just find bits and bobs here and there, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spell them out, and He will give us, what do you call it, scenario. Assuming the person has left behind children, assuming the children comprise male and female, assuming it's only female, assuming it's only male, assuming it's both, assuming he has left one parent, the father, assuming he has left both father and mother, assuming he has left only the mother, assuming he has got siblings, assuming he has got grandchildren. So different scenario, and he will spell them out in the proper fraction. So in those days, only very few people specialized in this. And major most establishments that work on Islamic finance, etc., what they do now is they have a window for will. And I think if I can see the trajectory of marble capital is something they will want to explore as an area. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them and bless their efforts. So it is there, and different permutation will give you different results, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clinical about it, very detailed. So, and it's irrespective of whether the person is a male or a female, etc. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spelled all this out. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I brought just two hadiths. I had about 59 or so in Al-Bukhari. So I just decided to bring these two. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu warḍah, he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is not permissible for any Muslim who has something to will to stay for 2 nights without having his last will and testament written and kept ready with him. Look at that. This is in Al-Bukhari. This is a Sahih hadith. On one occasion, maybe in the last 5 years, I can't remember which year, but long before the lockdown, I read this, and I've been very, very passionate about this. I have had a lot of books, read a lot of books about it. And hardly have I attended a lecture that is focused on will, Islamic will. And I was thinking to myself, the level of awareness on this is very low and poor, because number one, in our culture, nobody wants to die. If you walk up to your father who is 80-year-old and you say, Dad, have you done this? He will look at it, Orikulo do me. Do I look like somebody who is going to die? That's an 80-year-old guy. So people don't want to come to terms with, you are going to die one day. And you will die when you least expect, because the time you are going to die is already written. Allah Akbar. But we are oblivious to that fact and to that reality. Secondly, we think, oh, I'm poor, what is it? I've only got one raketika, one this and one that. Well, they will sort it out. No. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, 2 nights without having his will, you are not allowed to. So what I then did was I called some of my close friends who are professionals. I just, a bit random calling, maybe about 5 of them. Out of 5, do you know what? Only one has got. He said, well, I was talking to my lawyer one day, but it's just in the draft form. I've not actually given it much thought. That was only 1 out of 5. And they are practicing Muslims, alhamdulillah, mashallah, very conscious, loved ones to, very dear to me. And I was thinking, that was a wake-up call. So, and I started propagating this at any opportunity I have, that look at this hadith, unless you say this is not authentic and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has not said this. So we need to wake up. The second one is on the authority of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu wa ridha. He says, I recommend that people reduce the proportion of what they bequeath by will to the fourth of a whole legacy. For Allah's apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 1/3, yet even 1/3 is too much. Okay, maybe I should provide a little context here. The context is Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, very notable companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was one of the Ashara Mubashira, the 10 that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that will enter paradise. May Allah be pleased with him. He was on his sick bed, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam visited him, and the Prophet asked him regarding legacy, etc. And he said, well, I would like to donate everything I have for charity. The Prophet ﷺ says, no, you are not allowed to. You have to leave things for your family to inherit. He said, okay, I will do half. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, you can't do half. Half is too much. Then he said, I will do 1/3. And the Prophet ﷺ now said, and that's the quote at that last sentence. He says, 1/3, yet even 1/3 is too much. The Prophet ﷺ said that. So off the back of that statement of the Prophet ﷺ, or the discussion between the Prophet and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, which is another hadith, but it's a long one. So I decided I will paraphrase it for you rather than writing it all out. So on the back of that discussion, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu now said, okay, I recommend that people reduce the proportion they want to use as charity in their legacy to 1/4. So that's him. But the scholars have said anything 1/3 and below 1/3 will be acceptable, so that your family, your close relative will have the opportunity of benefiting from at least 2/3 of your legacy. This is Islam. The Islamic wills, the question will be, why do we have to have wills when you have already said everything is already spelled out, depending on your circumstance? Whether you have one daughter and that's all you've got, whether you have one son and that's all you've got, whether you have daughters and sons, whether you are left with parents, whether Allah has already determined this, then why are we writing will? You are writing will because you have an opportunity to do exhortations to your family when it's like they are hearing what you have said. And as a conscious Muslim, I am, as the servant of Allah, I encourage you to be dutiful to your deen, etc., etc. It's like it has a special place in their heart when they hear that's what you have written, and that's a prologue. The list of assets and liabilities, maybe they don't know all. That will be complete. And that's why will is something that you will continue to update as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you. All your circumstances change because assets may go. So you have to update it. Disclosure of facts that may not be widely known to your family members. Stating some wishes that do not contradict the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, where you want them to bury you, etc. Opportunity to give up to 1/3 of legacy as charity. If you didn't state it in your will, nobody will do charity for you in that because it belongs to those you have left behind. But if you have written it that I want 1/4 or 10% or 5% or 1%, and this particular one to go to this charity or for this particular cause, they will respect that. If you didn't state that in your will, you have no opportunity for that. Why is it important? In it, they will be able to draw your funeral cost, to be able to pay your debts, assuming you have some, to be able to do the execution of your will, including the probate, distribution of your belongings according to Sharia, because in that will, particularly if you live in the West, even if you live in Nigeria, if you die intestate, that without any will, then it becomes contentious. In Yoruba land, it's legal. They will go there, they will say, we are going to distribute it. Ori Ojori or Idigi. Idigi is the legal one. So depending on how many wives, so if a wife has got 5 children, they will, you have 2 wives. So all the 5 children will get equivalent of what the other wife has got, even if it's only 1 child. How just is that? How fair is that? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not taken this lightly. Time over time. Let's quickly go to endowment. Endowment, we call it waqf. It involves donating an asset, example, building, landed property for religious or charitable purposes. And you don't have an intention to reclaim it ever. You are donating for that purpose. The asset is revenue generating, and proceeds from the asset are expended for charity purposes. And you can be specific what sort of charity you want it to be used for. A charitable trust may hold and manage the donated assets. And that's very common in the West, and I think in the Middle East, probably in Malaysia as well. The person making such dedication is known as the waqif, the donor. And we have 2 types, ahli wa khairi. Ahli is for your family members, is for them, but you are not giving it to a specific individual. Somebody is managing it so that the beneficiary will be your family. Khairi is for general charity, which you can specify as you wish. The 3 main constraints in waqf are: number 1, the one endowing the waqf, that is the waqif, and the subsequent maintainers should sequester the principal and allocate the proceeds to the charity. We mentioned that earlier. The endowment should legally be removed from commodification such that it is no longer on the market. It will not be sold. It will not be inherited by your heirs, your close relatives, and it will not be donated. It's there for that purpose. And that's why you can see waqf ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. I read an article about 5, maybe 10 years ago about the charity Uthman bin Affan did that's years back, and what it has actually turned into big investment, and every penny or real they realized from that is being used for charitable purposes. Allahu Akbar. Over 1400 years ago. When a man, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, when a man dies, only 3 deeds will survive him. Sadaqatun jariyah, continuing harms, and this normally comes from endowment as well. Profitable knowledge that he shares or she shares, and a child praying for him. So the first aspect is what is relevant here. Sadaqatun jariyah, it lives after you, and even when you are in your grave, you will be having the reward. Look at how beneficial that is. Your child will die one day. The knowledge will be there, particularly if you have written a book or you have written an article that we are still referencing. My brother mentioned Al-Ghazali and some other notable scholars. Is because of the efforts they've done on the path of knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them. Will and endowment. What are the similarities? What are the differences? I can skip over this if time is not there, but my sister has said I can carry on. So I'll carry on until she says 2 more minutes, then I will hasten.
It's okay, Prof.
I should carry on. Do you want me to carry on or stop in 2 minutes? I can't hear you.
Yes, please, go on, Prof.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So what are the similarities? Just for the sake of analysis, the 2 we have to, when you are writing your will or when you are donating for endowment, you have to have sincere intentions. If you have your sincere intentions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. And whatever you have spent or you have left as a legacy, tajiduhu inda Allah. You will find it in the sort of, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a better form of reward. On that day, children or wealth will avail no one, illa man atallaha biqalbin salim, except those who come with a very tranquil heart. So sincere intention is applicable to both. Both are overseen by an appointed person or party. I cannot distribute my own wealth after I've passed away. Somebody will, because I'm not there. And if it were to be endowment, I have to give it out for others to manage. So both are, they involve a second or third party. Rules of execution are very clear in both cases. The transfer of, both involve transfer of assets from the owner, whether willingly or unwillingly. Willingly in the case of endowment, unwillingly because you have died. You will die. And once you die, it's no longer yours. You can't even remember. So it includes formalization. It requires formalization, both. Both will help in the realization of the objectives of Sharia, Maqasid, all of them. What are the differences? It's not obligatory that I do endowment. If I like, I do it. If I like, I don't, as long as I'm doing other forms of charity. But in terms of will, if you go back to that hadith, 2 nights should not pass without me having a will written and preserved. So will is compulsory, endowment isn't. Endowment could be for any cause, for anyone. Will is for your family, majorly. The way, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been very prescriptive about it. Will be executed after my death, but endowment, it can be executed in my life, and I can derive pleasure that I'm helping others. In terms of endowment, it involves just assets only. I'm sorry, in terms of endowment. In terms of will, it will be both assets and liabilities involved so that they can discharge them accordingly. Endowment is at the owner's discretion. Will is prescribed to the minutest detail. You don't have any say in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. Endowment is for specific assets. Will cover everything you have left behind. And in terms of will, you can actually, part of the 1/3 or less than that you want to use for charity, you can dedicate it for endowment as work, if you like. So for will, the two can be together. But endowment is endowment. Will would never appear from endowment because you have already let go. You've donated in your life because you have control over it. I think this is my last slide. The protection of life and lineage. The role of will and endowment. The will provides for your closest relatives so that they can be able to cater for their needs after you have passed away, so that their well-being can be ensured, so that my brother mentioned earlier on, so that their honor, dignity can be preserved. And finally, look at the wisdom of Islam. You've lost somebody. But by the time the executors now say, okay, he has left you with this, this is your proportion, at least that can give you some sort of consolation because you are grieving. When you are grieving, in that process, you are very sad about your loss. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just wants to kind of console you naturally. If nobody brings anything, and we're very poor at doing this, people will rally around in the first day, first week, probably first month if you are very lucky, after which you are left to your own devices. Nobody even knows telephone call. all the curriculum of your husband or your wife or whatever, they've all gone. You are left to your own devices, particularly in our own areas. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to console you. So this is part of preservation of life. Also, the gift element of the will, that is the up to 1/3 that you have control over, is an opportunity to be able to provide for those who are not catered for or who are not included in your will by Allah, not by your own design. For example, if you have a non-Muslim relative, you cannot inherit them, they cannot inherit you, however close they are to you. And people, maybe your grandchildren that have been disqualified because of your circumstances, your siblings that might have been disqualified because of your circumstances, your close friends, or people that you just want to help. So that will provide for them, and their needs will be catered for, their well-being will be looked after, and their dignity will be preserved. Endowment provides for a section of the ummah. It grants them the means my brother mentioned earlier on, so that they can actually work in a dignified way. They can earn income. They can live their life devoid of shame. It can provide job opportunities. You can imagine if an endowment has grown into being a multinational corporation, how many people will be employed in that process? We are helping the community. And if you do that, it's a motivation for others. And this is why the scholars will say, don't criticize people who, when they announce their distributing zakah or their endowment, are done publicly, or they are showing off. You don't see their heart. When they do that, then it encourages others to do similar things, set up foundation, set up work, etc., to help others, so that, as my brother says, the wealth will not continue to revolve around those who are rich amongst you. At least others can benefit to the extent that they can be comfortable. Endowment contributes to the common good. Those of you who have studied economics, they have those, what are the goals of, or the economic objectives of the state? Welfareism, employment, etc. So when you have work institutionalized and people understand it, this will contribute in no small measure. Inshallah, that's where I'm going to stop. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make what we have had beneficial to us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this effort from the organizers as ibadah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Allahu Akbar. Wow. Zakumuha khairan, Professor, for this beautiful presentation. MashaAllah. Thank you so much. In fact, I think from what you've done here, you've more or less made jobs of some of us here. Well, me in particular, because I happen to be the head of Islamic wills at Marble Capital. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So yeah, as you rightly said, you know, this Islamic wills, it's not something that a lot of us want to know. It's almost like a taboo. When you tell people, have you written your will? Are you prepared? Have you start preparing, putting your affairs in order? And can just imagine all research that you did, and you realize that even amongst your circle of learned people, that reluctance is still there. As you said, everybody wants to make Jannah, but nobody wants to talk about death. And it is going to come up whether we like it. It's better for us to prepare, and apart from us securing, so to speak, to an extent, the future of our loved, even for it to act as a sadaqah to career for us, it's important that we manage our affairs after life. Very, very important. Thank you so. I guess we're open to questions now from the audience. Well, I have one that I wrote down. So I was going to ask, this is regarding work. Can group of people come together to have an endowment, or is it just individuals? Can I and a couple of my friends, for instance, decide that I want to have a work? Can an organization even help set one up? Say, for instance, a charity organization decides that, oh, come and buy into to work, want to have something that we together. It's something, I mean, just shed a bit of light, structuring, so to speak, and what is permitted in terms of how it can. Thank you.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think your line was breaking, but I think I got this gist of the question. Yes, people can come together to donate to WAQF and say, okay, this is myself and my husband, or myself and my friend. Yes, that's allowed, as long as you agree the terms and they are clearly written, and that the ownership of whatever you are donating moves from those donors to that WAQF. So that will be accepted or acceptable. The second aspect is, can we do it through an organization? Yes, but the organization will have to understand the principles of WAQF so that they can carry it out well and as to satisfy the objectives, the Maqasid of Sharia in that aspect. You are on mute.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much.
Somebody asked a question regarding IVF. Yeah, it is allowed as long as we are using the sperm and the egg of the married couple. That's the important element. It's not allowed that they are using somebody else's sperm on somebody else's egg when they are not married together. So we have to be clear about this. Otherwise, the preservation of lineage will have been distorted through that. And scholars are agreeable to this, and they are agreed on this particular point. Wallahu a'lam.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Thank you, Professor. And again, I mean, the topics and discussions that we have had this morning clearly emphasize the importance of Sharia to us as Muslims, and how it is a mercy, or more than anything else, to us as well. From this IVF question in itself, shows that Allah does not tend burden on us. Allah does not tend for us to be in pain, too much pain, unnecessary. Yeah, He wants mercy for us, and that is what Sharia is helping us with. That is why the Sharia is there as a guidance and as a frame for us and humanity in general. I don't know if we have any more questions. Audience, I can't. Okay. Thank you so much. There's a hand. Okay. Should we open up the line, or somebody raised the hand? Oh, okay, I've seen the hand. Okay. I think we'll just open up for that person to talk. Okay, brother Ibrahim, you can now talk, please. Your hand is up. You can talk to the professor if you want to. Okay. Wow, thank you so much. Okay. Okay. So we have a question from Facebook on inheritance now. The question is, okay, the question from Facebook, from YouTube, sorry. Can heirs agree not to share an asset of the e.g. building, but rather agree to use it together? So basically, can they decide that, okay, oh, we want to be using this together, maybe a trust or something, whatever is generating, you know, we split as we want to. I guess that's a very important question, because that is something a lot of people that I think even that for my dad, I don't even think it's acceptable. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. The answer is yes. However, it has to be documented because what it is the execution, or those who are executing the will have already passed it to them that these are your share, there's a meeting, everybody understands this is your portion, this is your portion, this is your portion. And then after that, they now all sit down together and said, you know what, this is what we would prefer to do. The reason why it has to be documented and legally signed off is probably they are not blessed in the same way by Allah. Probably, in our context, well, our Balagbati Soro, I am the last born. If I say anything, they will say, Muwaye Maya. So that would be in the presence of a jurist or somebody of that caliber, and they will give them time to go and think about it. They will meet them individually to know that it is something they want to do. Once they have established that, then they will sign the agreement and they can use the asset or the property for whatever they want to use it for. The reason for that is to safeguard the interest of the weak and vulnerable ones amongst them. Vulnerability is not just about money, it's not just about age, it's about mental state of health sometimes. It's about other things that individual is dealing with. So they have to establish it Sharia-wise. Once they establish that this is sound mind, everybody is happy, they are jolly, and they have good reasons to do it, walillah alham, is good for them. Wallahu alam. Brother, Dr. Saeed, please, for lastly, do feel free to, okay, you have even unmuted it. So I wanted to say that, jump in, it doesn't matter because I cover will, I have to answer all the questions. That would be unfair.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with the Prof. Jazakumullah khairan. The presentation was well presented. Jazakumullah khairan for this comprehensive presentation. So with regard to the question, in the case of combining the inheritance property after the distribution. So I agree with Prof, but just one key point I wanted to highlight is that if the property has been transferred to them after the passage of the owner of the property, so even though it is allowed for them to use it for whatever business they wanted to do, but you know that this is what we consider as Sharikat al-Milik, property in co-ownership, because the ownership in the case of inheritance is not subject to the will or whim of the successor, the heirs. No, it is the scholar, they said that it is milkum ijibari, so which means it's a compelling ownership. You have to take it, whether you like it or not. So it is your portion, you have to take it. So, but what I want to highlight here is that even though they have this co-ownership on this property, and the property is generating income, so the question is that how are they going to share the revenue from these incomes? So the sharing of this revenue will be subject to their portion in inheritance. Take, for example, if you have one son and 2 daughters. So, and the Quran already perfected that part. So, لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. So, which means, so this son will get 2 portions, and the 2 daughters will get 1 portion each. So, which means, let's say the income they generate from this property that is income generating. So let's say they generate 40,000 K. So it means the son will get 20K, and these 2 daughters will share 10K. So this is the way they are going to share it, because it is part of their ownership in the inheritance. And whatever they are going to get there will be also subject to the law of inheritance.
Thank you, Dr. Mikail, for that explanation. Thank you. We have a couple of more questions here, and I think touched on one of them. The person asked that in Yoruba culture, male child gets more than the female inheritance, and the person asked if this is Islamically correct. I guess that touched on that from explanation. We are not allowed to, if I know, so to speak, as we will. But I mean, let me allow you scholars speak to this question.
Okay, we are not apologetic about the provision of Sharia. The provision of Sharia states that the male will take double what the female will take. That's not me, that's Allah that has legislated. But let's go on that. I mean, let's go unpack that, so to say. That same Sharia principle stipulates that, and everybody should listen to this well. And you may say, oh, these scholars have come again, but I will say it exactly the way Allah stated it. When Allah says, Al-Rijalu Qawwamuna ala Nisa, bima faddala Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it very clear that men are supposed to take care of women. So you provide, and somebody asked me once, what if your wife is working and she's earning comfortably? Yes, if she chooses to let go or to support you or the home by anything, that's completely what she wants to do. And it's not an expectation of her at all. And if by, let's say, she does it for 3 months and she says, okay, I'm not doing it again, then it becomes argument. Oh, you are going to leave me back. No. That's, you have to hold your shame. Okay, no, she has the right. So if Islam says you have to maintain women, you provide for them, for their basic needs, and you look after them, and they are well secured, their dignity is of paramount importance. You look after them, feeding, clothing, shelter, and all their needs. And the rest, according to your ability anyway. And they know. So to the extent that the Prophet, somebody came that, my husband, I can't remember, but whatever it is, one of those notable companions, he's a very stingy individual. And I used to pinch from it. I said, yeah, that's your deal. If he's too stingy that he's not providing for you, that's legitimate. So now if you put it in context, if Islam, that same Islam now says men should have double the women, because men are supposed to be providing for women. And if their father passes away, they will have a portion. If their husband passes away, they will have a clear portion, regardless of how many children, regardless of they have that specified percentage that will go to either husband or wife, etc. So I'm not apologetic about it. That's the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you want to put it in the context of modernity, but you know now, when we, after our marriage, we agreed I will be paying the rent, she will be paying the electricity and water and all this bill, and I will be paying school fees, she will be buying school uniform and books, I will be paying. All these are things that you have actually brought about by yourself. Allah has no knowledge of it, and He has not legislated it like that. But it's not haram if a woman voluntarily, it's not that you call her, Mariam, you know, you are now working. Your salary income is almost at par with mine now, you see? So it will be unfair for me to do all this so that you are now keeping your money and you are using it to enjoy life. It's a no-go area. And I make bold to say that. So that is the balance. That is the balance of Islam, Wallahu alam. So it's not Yoruba culture. And I want you to take time, is because what I've been asked to do is to give you a kind of a taster session. We have done this as a week-long seminar before, where we were taking them one by one. So if I'm giving half an hour, I'm just here to encourage you, to stimulate you. So go and read more, and there are books you can actually download free online to read about this. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us.
Allah, mashallah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, one of our audiences asked if presentations can be sent to them. I mean, it's for, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying that one of the audiences asked if the presentations can be sent to them. God and Dr. MIKAIL, I'm sure we can talk about that and see how it can be shared. Some of those that have requested for it. Thank you so much, Dr. MIKAIL. You have something to share with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with Prof with regard to the question. So actually, just one point I want to highlight is the story that Prof mentioned. It is the story of Abu Sufyan when his wife approached the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that Abu Sufyan, la yutini min malihi ma yakfini wa waladi. So afa akhudhu min malihi. So she asked the Prophet sallam. So he's a stingy person. So he doesn't give me what is enough for me and my kids. Can I take from his property? And this is where the scholar they discuss about whether a judge can give a judgment based on his knowledge. So because they said that the Prophet ﷺ knows Abu Sufyan, that he is a stingy person. So he did not give that judgment based on what he heard from the wife. And other scholars say that no, this is not based on the judgment. It's based on fatwa. Because if you give fatwa, you can just listen to just one person, the person that is asking you about the rule of Sharia. Because if it is judgment, you need to see both sides. You need to see the woman that is claimant, that is claiming that is not giving enough uptake for her and her children. So then they say that this is based on the fatwa. It's not based on judgment. But the point here is that this is to know the role of men according to Sharia. So the men supposed to be the one to take care of. In fact, to me, I don't know where, because even in Yoruba culture, the husband will be the one to take care of the wife and his children. So I don't know where we bring this kind of ideology that it has to be half-half. And this is what the Sharia brings. And that's why when you are giving this kind of inheritance, even though the illah, why Almighty Allah decided that the men will get double of that of women in the inheritance, this is also ma'qulatul ma'na. So something that we cannot rationalize because our intellect cannot comprehend the reason behind it. But some scholars say that, yeah, we can rationalize it, and they use the fact that Prof just quoted that al-rijal qawwamuna ala nisa bima faddala Allahu ba'dahum ala ba'din, and the Almighty Allah scholar emphasized, he said that wa bima anfaqu min amwalihim, and for what they are spending. So which means if you are the one that you have to spend, of course, that itself should be given certain consideration. So this is this is what I have.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We're out of time, but we'll take these two last questions because it seems like they're quite important. And then after these two questions, Professor, thank you so much for your time. We'll be able to, you know, leave you to attend to other urgent matters. So the first one is, can your work be more than a third of a person's assets at the time of creation? So not at the time of death. So when I'm creating my work, for instance, can it be more than a third of my total asset?
I mean, as long as you are living, you have prerogative over what you want to spend in charity. However, what you are not allowed to do in Sharia is to circumvent the regulation of Allah, because you wouldn't want these children are not listening to me. They are still Muslims, but you want to show them. And as a result of that, you go and do waqf. That is where the problem will lie. And that's when I was highlighting the, what do you call it, the similarities between waqf and will. So sincere intention is really important. It's really important. And that's why even, you look at that conversation between Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I want to do charity, I want to do endowment and help others. I donate everything. I want to donate everything. The Prophet says, no, you have to leave something for your family. He said, okay, half. He said, no, half is too much for you to donate. He said, what about 1/3? He said, well, 1/3 will be fine, but even though it's a bit much. So we've got to have consideration for our family, but it all depends on individual circumstances. If, for example, somebody like Bill Gates or all those very rich people, 1%, you know what it means. So if they donate, because whatever they are leaving behind is still mouth-watering. So that's why, as Dr. MIKAIL mentioned earlier on, circumstances really, really matter when you want to adjudicate. And we have to have sincere intention for Allah when we're doing that. Wallahu a'lam.
Thank you, Prof. The second question, can an individual buy off ownership of other beneficiaries if they so desire? So say, for instance, the person has passed on and, can you hear me? The person has passed on and then inheritance has gone to the beneficiaries. If seeing the beneficiaries, one of them talks to the others and says, oh, I want to buy you off, can I sell to you? Is that permissible? That's the question here.
Okay. When you have these sessions, you have all sort of questions. So, what we should not do is a delicate matter. And I think my brother did emphasize that earlier on. It's a delicate matter. And I did mention earlier on that you don't use subtle coercion. Why? Why do you want to buy off his own portion? It should be the other way around. If that individual approaches you that I have better things to do with my money, if I'm able to turn this asset into liquid cash, it's a different ball game. And then it's important to examine the power dynamics there. Is that individual who wants to buy more influential, powerful, well-connected? Is he richer? Is he older in our Yoruba culture? Such that individual feels helpless. Well, even if I don't, do I have a choice? Oh my God, anyway. I better just get money from it. That is haram. That is haram. That's why I put all the principles down earlier when somebody asked the question, can they take possession and then say we want to now use it for an investment or whatever? It has to be thoroughly investigated because Islam, it says the vulnerable ones are looked after. Their interest is of paramount importance. And the Prophet said, Iyakum wa du'a al-mazlum. Be careful with the supplication of the oppressed, because there is no barrier between that dua and Allah's acceptance. So if they are vulnerable, and so the reason is important, those who will adjudicate, it is really important that they establish that this is a, what do you call it? Both parties are willing, they are eager to, rather than one party, particularly if they are superior. Wallahu a'lam.
Inshallah. Thank you, Professor. I have just one more. That's it. I promise. Just this last one. I overlooked the time, but I think it's important as well. So this person is asking that if one of the beneficiaries of the bill is misusing what has been given to, if one of the beneficiaries is the property that has been given to him or her, can that property be booked from that person? Say, for instance, we know clearly that the person that has passed is thing and who has willed it to somebody who is not as conscious, and now, for instance, using the property as a beer parlor or a betting house. Can that property be taken over by those by the other beneficiaries, for instance, or those who are love to allow Akbar?
No. What it is at the point at which we are distributing the assets according to Sharia, those individuals are Muslims. They are Muslims. In fact, scholars are of the view that even if they are Muslims that are not praying, they are still saying Shahada. They are Muslims. So once they've taken possession, what they do is just like their normal wealth. That's the way it's going to be treated. They've worked, they've earned this, or somebody gave them something. It's their property. So what they do with that property is entirely up to them, but it will be held accountable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way he describes it, says, وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا جَعَلَكُمْ مُسْتَخْلَفِينَ فِيهِ. That word, the key word is mustakhlafin, that Allah has only made you custodian over those assets. So the asset belongs to who? Jalla wa ala, Allah. You are just a custodian for that asset. You can claim it because it's yours, but Allah is the owner. So you are going to regarding your wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will query you. So that individual, you have no business with what he does with it. We can go there, admonish, we can say, oh, this is not the legacy of your father or your mother. Do you think if your mother were to be alive, she will be happy the way you are using this, etc.? We can do all this, but we don't have the power to say we are withdrawing or withholding. No. Wallahu alam. I think Dr. Saeed may want to contribute to that.
Yes, actually, Prof, you have said it well, because we have to look into the intention of those who wanted to acquire the property. I think in the first question with regard to the acquisition of property after the inheritance, the scholar said that وَحْكُمْ لِكُلِّ عَامِلٍ بِنِيَّةِ وَاسْدُدْ عَلَى الْمُحْتَالِ بَابَ حِلَّةِ فَإِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So which means if you wanted to buy the portion of others in order to control the entire portion of the inheritance, you should not be allowed to do so. Because this is hila. You want to use this legal means. So because maybe you can call it a legal means, so that when I buy them off, so I will be able to take the control of the entire of the property. That is not allowed. And as Prof highlighted that after the passage of the deceased, the property belongs to the successors. So which means they are the one that they own the property together now. And as I mentioned, this is Sharikat al-Milik. So they own it, they co-own that property. So no one has the authority over the other on that particular property. So you cannot say that I'm be the one to take control of it. And they will be responsible for whatever they use that property for. So whether they are using it in non-halal way or in halal way, this is their problem. So it's not the problem of the deceased. That's why in the case of will, when you give the will now that you want one of your successor to take, let's say, 1/3, the scholars say that it is allowed for the rest of successor to give consent. So which means if they don't give consent, because the property, the scholars say that the reason for that is that once the person passed away, so the property now belongs to the successor. So they have the right to give that 1/3 of will to one of the successor or third party. So which means they have absolute right and control of the property, and anything that will restrict that control is not allowed in Sharia. So it's another layer. So when they are using it for non-halal means, this is not our, it's not going to be our business. So, but we can call them, we can call the attention that this is something that will be answerable to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will be punished for that.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you, Doctor. Professor Kamil, thank you so much for your time. We have just one person that wants to speak. He's allowed to speak if he wants to. I mean, thank you so much for your time. Mr. Said Olayemi, you have your hand raised up. You want to say something?
Yes.
Salam alaikum. Please go on quickly.
Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Okay. What I really want to appreciate the discussion. It's very much intellectually exposing, like I said. And I want to take the opportunity to ask a question that is lingering now, especially during Ramadan. Before Ramadan has been on, but there is this question of if a woman who is pregnant and before another Ramadan is still winning a child, and there's a controversy of is it will fidya be okay to waive the fast she had in the past, or she needs to pay them back. So there is this controversy about the fact that she needs to pay it back. That's what is most appropriate. So I wanted to benefit from the scholars on board here. How best can they attend to this as a husband and wife? Since we have said that what can the husband do to help the woman out of this spiritual commitment that she needs to really do? That is why I felt I wanted to gain from this. I would really love that if I can be more enlightened. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much for the question. Prof.
Well, I have views, but I prefer Dr. Said to answer it. If I have any other comments, I'll give afterwards, inshallah.
Dr. MIKAIL, are you still there? Can you please help us out with this question?
Yeah, please, can I get a question again?
Okay, let me go first. If you have any other comments, then you can. It's about the issue of a woman breastfeeding. Then, from my experience in the past, you can be in that cycle for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Either you are breastfeeding this year, and the following Ramadan you are pregnant, or you are still breastfeeding. Then the cycle then perpetuates depending on the stage that lady is. And I've seen a situation where for 5 years that lady is unable to fast. They are exempt from fasting because of their circumstances, either breastfeeding or they are pregnant. Yes, you can do feeding of the fasting Muslims until the circumstances become stable. But I'm not oblivious to the fact that some scholars will say they are part of those who have been given temporary reprieve. So you will not fast, but you will accumulate and try to fast it. The objective of Sharia is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Yuridu Allahu bikum al-yusra wala yuridu bikum al-usra. The intention behind fasting is not to make life difficult for you, is to grant you ease. So doing feeding fasting Muslims will suffice in the interim. And if somebody will say, okay, after the 5 years or 7 years, they've stopped child rearing or they have got a gap, are they going to fast for 1 year or for half a year to repay? No, you can do fidya until you are stable. But I am aware that some scholars will say accumulate and count until you are able to start fasting, or you do fidya, then it's still better if you fast later on. But my position is do fidya, and if Allah permits that you are out of the cycle in time and you want to fast to repay, but fidya will suffice in the interim. Wallahu a'lam.
Thank you so much for the clarification, Professor.
Okay. Okay, I got the point with regard to the question. So actually, the view of a scholar, especially Muhakkikun like Ibn Qayyim, is that if you leave it because you are afraid of the child that you are taking care of, that you are breastfeeding, so they say that you need to pay back this fasting. So when you are, but what they are trying to say is that if you leave fasting, so for that particular reason, even though it's not necessary for you to give a fidya, so because you leave it for a genuine reason, so but you have to pay back the fasting, so later on. So, but if you, they say that if you leave it because you have, you're afraid of yourself, perhaps maybe there's some danger. So if you want to combine breastfeeding and fasting at the same time, so you are allowed to do fidya. So meaning that you are allowed to do fidya, but there is no need for the repayment of fasting after the month of Ramadan. So I think this is the way to go about it. So mean that if you are afraid of the child, so we have to differentiate. When you're afraid of that, if you continue the fasting, it's going to affect your child, not yourself. So that way now you can leave fasting and repay it later on.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for the insights. Thank you to our scholars for your time, for the patience. Thank you so much. May Allah thank you on our behalf. Jazakumullah khairan, Professor KAMIL, OMOTESO. Thank you for your time, and then we hope that in the future, call upon you again. You kindly oblige us. Thank you so much for your time. And Dr. MIKAIL as well, who happens to be on the Sharia board of Islamic real products that we are coming up with. Be on the lookout for that as well. And electronic Islamic bill coming from Marble Capital. You know, just a solution to some of the problems that we have in the Ummah. Thank you so much, Dr. MIKAIL, and thank you to the audience as well for your time. We really do appreciate you. Pray that Allah accept all of our acts of ibadah, accept all of our du'as, and make all of this count for faith matters. Jazakumullah khairan. Salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And thank you, Prof, for the presentation and enlightenment. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.